Hello and welcome.
I know. It's tough. All right. Okay. Actually, we're rolling. Hello. We're back on the show, The Church of Mark. We have Sera-Lys Mcarthur with us today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Luckily, it's not as hot as it usually is outdoors.
Thank goodness.
Because usually in here it's like super hot. We have the air conditioner off only for the interview, of course. Otherwise, it would interfere with the microphone. So yeah, welcome to the show. And I know you have a tight schedule. You're off later this week on another adventure. And where are you headed off to?
Back to New York. I've
New
been
York,
up here for quite a while. So I was in Halifax for about a month, and then
Right.
I've been here for several months, and about 3 months, I think. And then I'll go back to New York and then figure out what's next after that.
Great. And you just came back from some premieres. I know one was virtual, and the other one you were there in person.
Yeah, correct. So I just went down to Los Angeles for Outfest in LA, and that was really fun. And that was to promote our short film, kwêskosîw, She Whistles, which I produced, and I also act in as well. And also that film premiered at Fantasia Fest in Montreal, but it was virtual and online this year. And I had kind of a double header because another film that I act in, that I have a lead role in, called Don't Say Its Name, was also doing its world premiere at Fantasia.
Right. I've seen a lot of articles, a lot of great comments and reviews about Don't Say Its Name. And that was with Ruben Martel,
That's
correct?
Yeah.
I know Ruben only from being Facebook friends, but we've been following each other for years and kind of supporting each other's projects and stuff and liking and sharing things. And have you worked with Ruben before, or...?
Well, yes and no. I've just known Ruben for a long time. We've been friends. We met through the Saskatchewan film industry connections, like my sister Nina MacArthur, who does hair and makeup. And we've been just, creative friends and encouraging friends for a long time. And he has another project that I'm helping him produce that we have in development right now, that he's actually had kind of different variations of it happening for a long time, and it was starting to feel really frustrating that he wasn't getting anywhere with it. And so he thought, you know what, I'm just gonna make a popcorn movie, like just an enjoyable flick that people can watch and have a good time, and it'll be native, but it's not like all about like issues and stuff, which, I mean, it's pretty hard to make a native movie without involving any issues. Yes. But so there are some, but yeah, so that was where Don't Say Its Name was born. And he had already, he has a penchant for, he just likes horror and thrillers and that kind of stuff. Right. That was kind of up his alley already. And he had some interesting experiences with spiritual interactions as a young man. And so that always kind of was percolating in the back of his mind. So he wanted to make this movie. And that's what we did. And he had this role in mind for me back when he was just talking about it. It wasn't even written yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, that happens a lot. Like, a lot of writers are like, hey, I have this role and thinking of you for, you'd be perfect, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time the movie's made, like, the character is completely different. They're like a different gender or age or species. And it's like, oh, never mind, you can't play it for whatever reason, or your schedules don't work out, or the producers have someone else in mind, or whatever it is. So amazingly, 5 years later, I still got to play that role.
Oh, wow. So it was like 5 years in development. And is that how long usually it takes a script to go from, someone writing it to what you see on the movie screen?
So I've heard that as short as a year, but I've heard as long as like 10 to 15 years. Wow. So like 5 is pretty standard, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that mostly because the story has to be written or rewritten due to certain challenges brought by the industry itself, or?
Yes. Well, usually the idea comes, then you have to actually put it down, type it out, which, different writers have different amounts of time that takes. Then
And
they
some
got
are
to
slow
do.
typers too. So
Well, I am. That's why I have never finished a screenplay. Yet. And then, but no, sometimes it's like working with different producers and different people that have a vision for it. Then you like got to work with a story editor and all that. And then you have to basically shop it around to different production houses.
Okay.
And then if you're in Canada, you start applying for telefilm funding.
Right.
And that takes a while to get going too. About a year probably from the time that you apply to when you can actually spend the money.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you shoot a lot of productions in your home province of Saskatchewan? Because you mentioned applying for telefilm. I'll assume they have some sort of a tax credit for
they do not have a tax credit.
They
and
don't?
That's what's really frustrating.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay, who do we call?
I forget who's in charge there now, but the other guy, we don't say his name.
Okay.
That's not what the movie's about, but it could be.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
There was a big... I used to work in Saskatchewan a lot, and I don't anymore because there is no film tax credit, and so all of the people I know that came up there have moved. So we either live in Winnipeg, Vancouver, or Toronto.
Right, and those seem to be thriving for the film business. All those cities have productions made with them, are made in the cities. We actually just watched a movie a week ago, Nobody, Bob Odenkirk. It was shot in Winnipeg.
Oh, cool!
I had no idea until I was watching the end credits.
That's cool that he was there.
It's not what I expected because it looked like Boston or something, right?
Right.
But they can make any sort of city, I guess these days, look like the city that it is.
Yeah, for sure.
So shooting, I guess, because you've been in so many different productions, just going through IMDb, and I won't list them all. There's a whole bunch here, and all sorts of different, I guess, genres and sort of different styles of storytelling. With Don't Say Its Name, you said that's more like a thriller, sort of horror. Type,
we put it in the horror category because it's like a kind of like an evil spiritual monster.
I see. Okay.
But it's more like it plays out more like a mystery. So I don't want to give people the, expecting a horror to be disappointed or too scared to watch it. Like it's more like a mystery, and then there's also this like demon monster.
Demon, okay.
Yeah.
But it's not like the typical horror, like someone's head gets cut off and blood squirting, or
there's a bit of gore, but it's not no decapitation live, and there's none of the other stuff that would get you an R rating. So I would assume if it got rated, it would maybe be 14A.
14A, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at, I haven't seen the film yet. I'm looking forward to it, but I've seen some of the, I guess, screenshots. I see one with you having the shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's violence, but
okay. Now, did you always know how to use a shotgun, or did they have to teach you for the movie? Did you have to take like a gun course, or?
I have taken a gun course, and I have gotten some trigger time practicing. Like I told you, Ruben had me in mind for the role for a long time, so he's like, "We got to get you some trigger time," and we were saying this for years, and I was like, "How do I do it?" And I went out shooting with him on the res in Saskatchewan.
Did you go skeet shooting or just targets?
Just targets.
Just targets.
Yeah. Okay. And then, but I have done skeet before. So I live in the U.S. most of the time, and there are more opportunities to go to gun ranges there. So I have been able to make it to a few. And I got to mess around with some automatics down in New Mexico. So that was pretty rad.
They love their autos down there, that's for sure. Automatics, that is.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite gun? And not to turn this into a pro-gun sort of conversation, but...
Do I have a favorite? I'm like the worst with names of like guns and cars and stuff like that. I like an Uzi.
Okay, yeah, Uzi.
That was fun.
There you go. That's right. Made by, I think, Israelis developed the Uzi. That's right. Yeah, 9mm, I believe. If someone could fact check me later, but I think it's a 9mm. So you kind of started, I guess, your whole career early. I was reading, I think you started at age 13. Mm-hmm. You had your first sort of like acting role.
Yes.
And you started your training early as well. Was that in high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the year after that.
Okay. So it was like just a drama class that you took in high school, and that blossomed into I guess the career where you are now, or were you always interested in acting? Because wasn't your mother also in the acting, or
no, she wasn't.
Oh, she wasn't. Okay.
I would say one of my grandmothers is a musician.
Oh, okay.
But,
so that's where the performer,
there's
entertainer comes from.
something,
I see.
I
Right,
think.
right, okay.
But I am the only actor, first actor in my family. Now, some of my nieces and nephews on my dad's side, they are interested in it now. So that makes me happy because I feel like I've helped like show them a possibility in their life. And the hard part about Saskatchewan now is because of that, not to talk politics so much, but like because of the lack of work, that there aren't like young people don't grow up seeing the film industry happening around them. They might see theater, a little bit of theater, but they don't really see opportunities in the film industry. So they don't think like, oh, I could do that when I grow up.
Right. Okay.
You know, so hopefully I've helped illuminate that to some of the young people in my family.
Great. And this is always a passion, acting, even before you hit high school drama? Or?
Not really. No, like I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I think when you grow up in Saskatchewan, like pre-digital, I didn't understand that you could be an actor. Like I didn't think that was a job. I thought those were like real people that lived in Los Angeles and just like went in front of the camera every day, and you had to live in Hollywood, otherwise you weren't allowed to do it. Like you know, like and even like I guess here like kids could like in Toronto people could audition for commercials and stuff when they're little, but you couldn't do that when I was a kid. So it was never like, oh, I'll be that kid on the commercial. Like you just never were, you know.
Just never were, right.
So no, I did a modeling class with my neighbor, and I liked that. So like learning fashion shows and photo shoots and stuff. Right. And then my teacher there, she was an actress, and I think she was like a host of a local cable show or something. And she was a model also. And so she had us do monologues, and she said I was good at it and that I should take an acting class. And I didn't really know what that was, but I was like, okay, I'll try it. And then, but in the meantime, the modeling agency got a call that they wanted a young Métis girl to audition for this CBC miniseries that was coming through called Revenge of the Land. Okay. And so they called me in for an audition, even though I hadn't really ever done that before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then I got it. So So then I took an acting class, and then I really loved it when I was on set, and I just wanted to keep figuring out how to do it. So I signed up for musical theater and like auditioned to be in a company, and like just keep training throughout the year, because even though there were some things filming there at that time, there was maybe like 2 projects a year. Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you brought up the musical theater, because I think we had worked on a production years ago for Red Sky Performance.
Yes.
Mr. Tim, I think it was called.
Mr. Tim.
Right. Yeah. And I forgot what the plot was, or the story, but how do you do it?
It's good. It's so it's basically like a little native girl and a little Caucasian boy that live in Saskatchewan. And then the horse that his dad is teaching him to break with cruelty.
Right, that's right.
Cruel methods. Yes. And she is a sort of horse whisperer, and she doesn't really know that. So she speaks Cree to it. And then they also start to understand each other and talk about their families and have a better understanding of each other's cultural backgrounds.
And Mr. Tim in Cree is big dog or large dog. Is that the translation?
Yeah, okay, a lot of Indigenous languages, that's what horse literally translates to.
Okay.
Like same thing in the Siouan languages, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota. Like if you say Shungatanga, it means big dog.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So in order to prepare for these sort of different roles, whether it's theater or film or television, how much prep time is there? For example, you're in various shows like Arctic Air, and Hard Rock Medical, and even just preparing for Mr. Tim, like learning about horses, or learning how to shoot guns. Mm-hmm. Like how much sort of prep time do you go into, I guess, getting deeper into the sort of the psyche and physical abilities of these characters?
Yeah, I guess it takes a while, but that's why it's important to have all these skills kind of on the back burner at least. Like, so when I had to learn Kung Fu for Sky and Chang, I had quite a bit of time leading up to that. And so I asked, like, we were about 3 months out of filming, and I was like, can I get some lessons? Like, it's pretty hard to train without going to an actual school. So I went to the school for like 5 days a week, like 5 classes a week, a kung fu martial arts studio.
Right.
And in that 3-month time, I was able to get a lot of information. And that, mind you, if it was a larger production, they would have paid to fly me somewhere and have me train every day and like, you know, but that's not how it works in Canada. So
Right. Is that just because of the budget, I guess?
it
or
is,
smaller?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so most Canadian productions are smaller, so there's kind of, they will help, like they helped pay for them, but like it was on me to find it and get there.
So they're kind of like, yeah, you figure it out on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
We need you to drive the stunt car, but hey, you know what, we don't have the budget, so why don't you learn with that with Jerry down the road?
Yeah, just go. So I mean, that's kind of how the shooting the guns worked too for me so far. Like I've been like, oh, I'm gonna figure out a way to get to a gun range and you know, like put the pressure on my fiance or something and be like, so we need to go shooting.
Okay.
And
it's not a request you hear very often. Well, in our household you do, but we're different.
We are different, all of us, aren't we? We're special.
Yes.
So I don't know. It takes a different amount of time for each thing. I've never really had the privilege of being able to just fully start like training full time for a project. So I kind of have to keep all these skills going on my own time. So like horseback riding was one that I developed. Another one was kung fu. Another one was shooting guns. And then I also try to keep my movement up. So like the like dance and stuff like that. Right. And singing also. So that's another one. Like it's hard to like, especially since COVID, like can't really go to a singing lesson anymore. So I've noticed that started to slip. So now I got to figure out how to bring that back up. Yeah.
There's no like online sort of singing,
probably
vocal instruction.
I don't know. If anyone knows, maybe you should put it in the comments. Tell me where to go.
Yeah, it's not the same. I find online instruction, because you know you don't get the body language, you don't really get the full experience, and sometimes if you got a slow like bandwidth, like the zoom's cutting out, like what was that like? The delay and the that's like the that's why I just couldn't imagine it working properly. Like maybe an outdoor lesson, but then like whose neighbors are not going to be annoyed by that? So that's true. I don't know. Eventually, I think, once COVID starts slowing down, I think things will probably start returning back to normal. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. Because, I'd be going to voice lessons right now if I could. Right. Yeah. I think we all would. At least I should. I haven't done a show. Well, actually, I have done a show last month. But prior to that, it was like 2 years. Right, I know. Like, I had a singing audition this past week, and I was like, oh, my goodness. I have not done this since before the pandemic. Like, that's right. The most I've done is just, like, YouTube karaoke in my living room at 4 a.m. So. And it's like not working out, and then someone's asking you to do a bench press again. Like, so you're taking off again, and I was reading some of your future projects coming down the pike, and some of them are really interesting. I'm not sure if you could talk a lot about them, and I'm not going to force you to, but I was reading about the sci-fi film, The First Encounter, about it takes place, I guess, in an extraterrestrial dimension where colonization never took place. Is there anything you can tell us about that? Sure, yeah. I actually don't know when that one's coming out, but I'm assuming hopefully soon, like it'll be this year. I guess we're, just finishing it, putting the final touches on it and whatever, and then like finding the right film festival for it to premiere at. Right. But basically, so that one it's actually set in Manitoba in the 90s, but there is a portal that goes to a different dimension that has never been colonized before. Ah, I see. So that's what I can tell you. Okay, that sounds really interesting, because there's been lots of, I guess, thought experiments about what if the Europeans never came to North America, what what would transpire. I was watching the show Cosmos, I think it was Cosmos, with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't think it was on that show. Sorry, I think it was on his podcast. It was on this podcast. It was something, yes, I think Star Talk, about if the Europeans had never came here, like the indigenous people would have become their own species of, a different species of Homo sapiens. Yeah, that's kind of what happens. Like, we don't really like explain it per se. So it does seem like where, like, you know what I mean? It's not what you would just think, like,
oh, we all look like people. Like,
that's right.
Definitely, it's not like that. So it's cool. It looks really interesting.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So even if Europeans never came, do you think someone would eventually discover North America? Like, quote unquote discovered? Whether it be, I don't know, people from Africa or people from
I think
Japan,
so.
or
Actually, you know what? I've never really bought the whole like Bering Strait theory, and I know we've like kind of adjusted it to like make it make more sense,
Sure.
But I don't think that all of the Americas were populated from the top down. Like I'm sure there was some boats and other parts that people got to, because there's such a variation in the way people look and the kind of cultural traditions that they have from north to south, and the languages, like you know what I mean. It would just make more sense to me that it probably was colonized like various ways, and like maybe like whatever happened to the Neanderthals, it really like ended up interbreeding some ways and not others. Like I don't know.
Because there's such a diversity of languages and even dialects within certain indigenous languages.
Yeah, exactly. And people are like, oh, we'll just speak like, whatever you speak. I'm like, that's a totally different language. Like, so we got to figure it out what you want the character to be. And
for the different roles, you had to learn different sort of languages. And what's that like?
I really like that. So that's something that, I guess I'm a quicker study than some people because I really enjoy it. I've taken linguistics and phonetics quite a bit, and I've taken it in various locations. So even though I've taken it through a Western schooling system, it's I've learned standard American and then various American dialects, and then I've learned it like phonetically transcribing in the standard Canadian dialect, and then from there I learned a bit more about like all sorts of English dialects, like even like patois in Jamaica. And then when I went to school in the UK, I had to relearn it all from like a standard British accent, and then they have a few like kind of ones that we were able to branch out. There's so many over there, it was really hard to find like a specific one, but yeah, RP is the one, and then like Cockney is for the lower class, and then there's others as well that are more regional.
Okay, I'm terrible at doing accents. So,
it's okay. I'm not good on the spot either. But yeah, so that helped me when I have to learn Indigenous dialects.
Okay. And
I also speak with elders and get like coaching. And, there's a lot of advocating that has to go on a lot from the actors' side when it comes to getting the material early, getting a proper coach or like a cultural advisor involved. And sometimes it's not your nation that you're depicting, so you don't want to just look at what they wrote on the page and assume that you know how to say it. Like you don't. So, sometimes if that's not handled from the production side in a timely fashion, then it can kind of fall on the artist's shoulders to like like, do I gibberish it or do I, which is really disrespectful. I don't. I just either just don't say it or I say it in English or, but I do put the pressure on because it's important to me to depict our languages in media and to help them live on and to show that side of our culture.
And is there, you said you usually have a coach, and they're, I guess, teaching you how to pronounce the words, and even in the meter that the language would be in?
Yeah. So my favorite way to work is the translation comes in, it's in phonetics. You can write it out phonetically with using English letters, or what I prefer is the International Phonetic Alphabet, which not everybody can read, but I can. So for me, it's a lot more specific. Okay. And so then they give me a recording to listen to. And usually the recording goes slow once and then fast once. Okay. And then after I do like a coaching with like the dialect coach, let's say if they have two different people, which on Outlander they did for Mohawk, they then had an elder come in person and sit down, and like she would say it, I would say it back to her, she would correct me, and then she'd say it again, and I'd try to copy her again, and she'd fine tune it.
Right. Okay. That's great. And do you see more Indigenous representation now in film and TV and theater? Even just having real Indigenous actors play the part versus getting someone, who's tanned and can grow their hair long and kind of be the stereotypical part?
Yeah, I do. It was really improving, but it also does, scratch some kind of like sore spots when it comes to stuff like that, because it still happens, and it seemed like nobody was listening. And then, the past year or so, like people have kind of changed. Like the narrative people are listening, it feels like, and kind of unpacking like all of this colonial harm that has happened when you misrepresent an underrepresented culture. That's what it's really more about. And unfortunately, you can't really like separate that from being like, oh, well, but I'm an actor. I play different races and ethnicities and cultural backgrounds. And like, I want that for actors. I do understand that that's, part of what we're doing. And, but at the same time, like, it actually is harmful when a community like the Indigenous community, when a child grows up and they literally don't see themselves represented on camera, on film, on TV, or anything like that, like even cartoons or whatever. And then you find one Native character, because there's one Native character in that one show, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's just like me. And then you find out that they're not even, they're just like Italian.
That's right.
And you're like, oh, never mind. I guess I am nothing. Like, yeah. So that's where I find that there's a responsibility that we owe to the younger generation. And if you're connected to the community, you care about the community, and if you're not connected to the community, you don't really care about the community. And so the actors that are playing Native, that aren't actually Native, are the ones that don't really understand the ramifications of what they're doing.
Right. They're doing it for like a paycheck, or
they're doing it for their art and for their career, and with
that said, then with more sort of Indigenous representation on camera, what about what's happening behind camera? Are we seeing more directors and filmmakers, even production companies? Because it would be good to have Indigenous stories told, but not have Hollywood profit solely off of the stories of another culture, if you get what I'm...
Totally, yeah. We're in this kind of like a growing pain stage where it's been recognized that we do need this representation behind the scenes in the key creative roles. And what does that mean? Because, first it was like, oh, we'll get a cultural consultant, but then you just give them a credit and you don't actually listen to them, and then you're like, culturally consulted by X Native and like and like, I'm not going to stand in the way of somebody getting paid either, but like, that's where, as a community, an arts community, we've started to kind of come together and be like, yo, it has to be more than just a consultant. You have to have them as a key creative position. So that's where a little bit more help has come from like Telefilm and other funding organizations, saying like, oh, well, maybe if we give maybe if we give Indigenous people or BIPOC communities, or the LGBTQ kind of communities their own kind of pathway that they can we need, like, you guys apply through this funding source and you through that and you through that. So I think that that's helpful, and it's getting there. We're still at the position where there are a lot of emerging producer, director, like creative types. And so, again, like, how much are the rest of your collaborators going to listen to you, and how much do you have to give them that they own the project? And who gets the final say at the end of the day? And it becomes like a paperwork game. I see. And you think you can trust people, but you don't know if you can. And in the end, you're like, well, I guess, and not really. That wasn't really what I meant. But so I think we're growing, and I think that it's gonna eventually we'll be telling Indigenous stories by Indigenous people, and they will be viable, and people will understand that they can make money off of these too, Absolutely. But right now we're still kind of having our hands held, which it's good and bad, because a lot of mentors mean really well, and they do really great things working with communities, but then there are the odd ones that don't seem to understand that what they're doing can be harmful if they're trying to change it.
Right. And these things, transitions sort of take time, because I think you have to develop the sort of the skill set as well, and get the resources.
100%, and that's the other frustrating side. Like, because even though I've been in the industry for a long time, I'm still quite emerging when it comes to producing, and there's like a whole world to learn. And
Right.
you know, I've been acting for over 20 years, so like that took a long time to learn what I know now, you know.
Right.
So at least it's not totally starting from zero, because at least it's similar contacts, you know. But it's a different skill set completely.
Well, it's exciting and great to see more Indigenous representation, definitely on camera and behind the camera, and now even in video games.
Yeah.
Your face is now in a video game. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's my voice more specifically.
Right.
She does
but the
look
character,
like
right?
me,
Yeah,
though.
she does.
So her name is Thunderbird,
Right.
and she is in the newest season of Rainbow Six Siege.
Okay.
It's called North Star. That is a very popular Ubisoft game that people, like millions of people, play at any given time around the world. So that's pretty cool.
I used to be in online gaming, but it took too much of my time, so I had to cut it out like cold turkey. So
I hear it's actually kind of difficult to play. So if you were a gamer, you might know how to play it, like, but it's pretty hard. But yes, so the cool part about that was Ubisoft knew they wanted an Indigenous female character to be the new character for Rainbow Six Siege, but they didn't know exactly what they wanted her background to be.
Right.
And so they thought, like, why would we write it before we cast it? Because then we can it's like what I was talking about, like when I don't know the culture or the language, am I representing it properly? And I have to get all these, like, even of my own culture, I do need to talk to someone to make sure that I'm
for sure.
Justifying this portrayal. But that's what happened. We like all auditioned, and I got a call back, and then I booked it, and then they asked me about my cultural heritage, and I sent them a really long email that said about like where I'm from and what kind of people and what language. And
your background's Assiniboine? Is that
yeah,
correct?
well, Nakota.
Nakota, okay.
I say Assiniboine because I spent a lot of time in the U.S.
I see,
and
okay.
We are called Assiniboine in the U.S.
Right.
And there's, there's different Nakota nations, and they're like in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then the one in Montana is Assiniboine.
Right, okay, I see.
But it's the same language.
Same way, okay.
Yeah. And also my grandmother might have been from there, but that is like one of those muddied stories that with residential school was kind of like erased. It's like, where did she come from? But yes, so Assiniboine is also like a word that people recognize, I think. Like if you're in like Manitoba, like you see Assiniboine Avenue, River,
exactly.
blah, blah, and people don't know that
it's
Nakota. That's like what we're talking about when something's called Assiniboine.
So the character in the video game is not that, but
she is.
Oh, she is. Okay,
she's
sorry.
Nakota.
Yes, okay.
So they found Nakota elders, like cultural consultants, and in this way, like they actually did listen to the consultants, if you would call them that, or advisors. They actually built the character with them.
Okay.
And I didn't even know who they were sourcing. Like Ubisoft did their own research to find who they needed to talk to, and they found 3 knowledge keepers in Saskatchewan, and they all collaborated together to be like, oh well, you know, what would it say on her jacket? And they're like, well, if we call her Thunderbird, which is a very important spiritual name, it has significance to do with like supplying water and being a leader.
Right.
So we'll put Wagia on her jacket.
Okay.
You know, and then that means Thunderbird. And then she has an MMIW patch.
Right. Okay.
And she has this. She has like tribal tattoos.
Right, that's right. I saw that. Right.
Yeah. And then this, her gadget is a Kona station, and Kona means friend or ally in Nakota, because when we talk about ourselves, we say like Nakona. Okay. So Kona is like the last part of that. So if you're talking to like, you call someone a Kona, that means like they're cool, they're good. Like,
okay, great.
Yeah. So then that's what her Kona station is. It heals people.
Great.
Yeah.
And she's like a pilot in this video game? Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Yeah, she's a helicopter pilot.
Oh, awesome.
That is not based on me.
Okay. You didn't have to take helicopter lessons?
No, but I want to.
I heard it's very hard to fly a helicopter.
Yeah, I don't know what. I should probably start with the plane, right?
Yeah, I only know one person that has their helicopter license, and that's Mike Large. If you still have it, Mike.
Whoa. I know, I was in Arctic Air, and I was like, I didn't really get to do any of that stuff.
Oh, no.
No, I worked in the office all the time.
Did Adam Beach learn how to fly a plane?
Yeah, they put Adam Beach and a couple of the other actors in like flight school. They didn't actually fly it, but like they learned how to do it.
I see, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're in a simulator. They never got on a real flight.
Yes.
That's probably safer that way. Anyways,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
it is. It's way safer.
Although they say flying is safer than driving a car. But I guess you'd have to know how to fly the plane
I guess
first.
it depends who's flying and who's driving. Like
That's true. I never thought of it that way. Yeah. I was also reading in your spare time, you teach ESL. Mm-hmm. And how did you get into doing that?
So it's one of those like fun side gigs that artists often have to fill their time with to get some extra money in between gigs.
Sure.
And I learned about it from one of my friends here in Toronto.
Right.
And the time zone of the Eastern time zone works best because the kids in China are just coming home from school.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then we start with them when we're like first thing in the morning.
Okay.
And you have to have a degree and teaching experience.
Oh, okay.
And so that was like a pretty great little gig for a while because you can kind of do it from anywhere that you have internet access.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're helping people out too at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And you get to connect with the kids and they're really cute and like, you know.
Sure.
It's the job that pays in several ways.
That's great. So if you weren't in the acting realm or world, what would you be doing otherwise?
Oh, man. I don't know. I've come around this corner recently where I'm like, I just don't like anything else. Like, why do I keep pretending that I can do all this other stuff when I just don't want to? Like, I just want to act. That's the more fun thing. I guess, well, actually, I think I would probably get into, like, being a naturopath.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I'm really interested in health food and approaching health from a holistic approach and not just like throwing pills at it, you know,
sure.
And trying to just feel better. Cause that's what I found. When I was about 28, I was like, oh, I'm so groggy and like, you know, I have no energy and I was kind of grumpy all the time.
That's me now.
No. And then, so I was like, wait, if I change my diet, like that would help. And it did. It helped a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Even just with my many health problems, I notice if I start eating clean, then like I've got bad sort of joint and arthritis problems, then it's less inflammation, less pain, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I have body pain as well. So
Okay.
I'm kind of like, how do I fix this without getting surgery or?
Yeah.
You know,
I've been working, having wonders with turmeric pills.
Yeah.
I take them every morning, but they're 2 huge pills, like horse pills. But it makes a world of difference, I find.
Yeah. I have a lot of turmeric and like juices that I juice a lot.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, not too much. But,
Not too much, that's right. Because then all the sugar's in the juice, right?
I know, that's the other thing. Everyone's like, oh, but the sugar. I'm like, okay, but I tried to do a broth cleanse and like, there's only so much broth you can drink. Like,
yes.
I love broth.
Oh, do you? I don't drink any broth.
But even then, it's like, oh, okay, I'm done with the broth. Like,
great. So I guess for the future, any big sort of goals, ambitious projects you want to work on? Anything that is on your wish list?
Well, that's a good question. I recently did some director shadowing on this season of Pretty Hard Cases on CBC. And my friend Madison Thomas, whom I met through Eagle Vision, the Burden of Truth people out in...
Burden of Truth, right.
Yeah.
We know Meegwin. Hi, Meegwin.
Hi, Meegwin. Yes, Meegwin and Madison know each other very well. They've been working together as well. And she was coming out here to direct an episode of Pretty Hard Cases. And I actually wasn't in that episode because I'm a recurring character, so I'm not in every single episode.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm here anyway. And like, I kind of want to learn how to direct for TV. So I think that's next on the list, like, is to try and figure that out. And
do more directing.
Yeah, just to have it as a potential for the future, because I do love telling stories and like stewarding stories, and making sure that they're told respectfully and all that. And you just have a lot more control over that when you're in a key creative position, which is why I became a producer.
Right.
And I producing is creative, but there's more creativity with directing.
Right.
Yeah.
Directing is more hands-on in telling the story versus producing.
Yeah.
Right.
Producing, you do have a strong hand in it, but it's kind of like not while the director's working, it's like leading up to it and like afterwards.
Okay.
And, like,
so when you're shadowing a director, how, do you get any input, or it's just watch what we do and stand over there out of the way, or what's it like, or is it more collaborative?
No, it's watching. It's a lot of watching. Okay. Yeah, but that was fine. I learned a lot, and she's a teacher as well. She teaches kids, so she knows how to kind of like give me a side lesson like while she's working.
Right.
So that was really helpful, and then I got to do a lot of off camera like reading the lines with the other actors. So
okay, that's awesome.
but other than that, it was just like learning, a lot of learning.
Okay. So say a genie came out of this microphone and gave you an unlimited budget to do whatever sort of story or production. What would you do? Or do you have anything in mind?
Okay, so I have like a lot of we have a lot of projects on the back burner or whatever, irons in the fire, if you will, in development.
Sure.
I have one that I'm working on that is based on my sister Nina's life. And I see it as kind of like a Little Miss Sunshine, but like meets like Once We're Warriors. Like,
that sounds interesting.
Yeah. So that's one that I just, it'd be really great to kind of get that one going. And then I love genre stuff. So there's like kind of like, I guess, almost like a Western, like almost like Django Unchained, but nice. Indigenous female.
Right, okay, great.
Yeah.
Like just as brutal violence too?
Yeah.
That's the way you got to do it.
I love that stuff. I'm sorry for everyone else who doesn't like violence. I really like it. I find it very entertaining and satisfying and gratifying to portray. Like it's really fun.
You're preaching to the converted here. We only watch films where the warning is they may contain extreme violence.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's just
violence and nudity, of course.
Well, they do go hand in hand, but not in Don't Say Its Name. There's no nudity.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's safe for everyone to watch. Mm-hmm. It's a family movie. Well, maybe not. But, well, we're coming up on the end of the show. And is there any sort of advice or sort of, words of encouragement you can give to other Indigenous, people, actors that want to get into the business and they might be in Saskatchewan or maybe in a remote area in Sioux Lookout or wherever they might be? What sort of words of encouragement or advice do you have?
Just try to get a good internet connection, because one good thing about the pandemic is a lot of really awesome teachers do online classes now.
Okay.
And so that's a great way to get your foot in the door. And then you can start submitting yourself for auditions, and you'll get self-tape requests. And you can do that with your cell phone. And the more you do, the better you get. So don't expect to be brilliant overnight. Everyone thinks it's just like, oh, you either got it or you don't. And there's an element to that, but you can definitely get better. So it's like anything else. You got to practice, and you got to keep trying to improve.
Right. If you lift that dumbbell only once a month, you're never going to build muscle. It's a constant sort of process.
Yeah.
And how long would it say it took you to realize, okay, I'm finally at the level where I could be, submitting auditions or doing bigger roles?
I think when I was younger, I kept just putting myself out there over and over and over, even though I didn't know if I was ready. I think Englishman's Boy was a big turning point for me. So that was in 2006. But going to school, I went to musical theater school in New York, and that helped me build my confidence and realize I had what it took to do a lead role. And so all of that really, eventually that's where the confidence comes. You can't really compete with experience. So that's what you just pack those years on, and eventually you're going to feel confident about what you're doing.
Right. And one final question, your favorite city to reside in? You've kind of lived everywhere from the UK to here to in the States.
So I love New York.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew
it just got into my blood, and I love it there. And it just means a lot to me. And I love coming up to Toronto too, and we're probably going to move back here more permanently.
Okay.
Soon. But New York is where my heart is.
And that's where your residence is now in New York? Or
yes and no.
Most of the time?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I split my time. So I'm up here for about half the year and down there for half the year. But that's where all my stuff is.
That's where all your stuff is. Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Hopefully we'll make it down there after the pandemic.
Yeah.
If they open the borders to again.
I think it is September 10th or something.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be soon.
Okay. And what's their vaccination rate? Just I could look that up. It's high in New
York.
New
York's is really high.
Okay.
Yeah. They made it past their goal a while ago.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Then it's safe to go.
It is pretty safe.
Well, thank you so much again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It was great talking to you, and I could talk to you for like another 2 hours.
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly. But also, it's getting hot in here, so we should probably turn on the air conditioning.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks,
yeah.
Mark. Bye.